Number two would be branding, making sure that you use the right voice and tone and that you're actually communicating as a brand to the users and not just like trying to sell.
Today, I'm sitting down with Andrés, who is a conversion rate optimization specialist. And today we break down the best things you can do for your brand in order to improve your conversion rate and tips on how to double your conversion rate. So with that all being said, I'm Nikita from aspectagency.com, and let's get into the podcast. Andrés, welcome to the Scaling E-commerce podcast. It's a pleasure to have someone on with specifically your experience because you mainly specialize in landing pages, landing page design, development, as well as conversion rate optimization.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So one thing I wanted to discuss today with you and share with our audience is a lot of the things that people overlook when they're considering conversion rate optimization, as well as the difference between what you actually do versus what people think that you do. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of people think of conversion rate optimization, it's like, oh, I got to change this button color here, or I got to move this text here. But I'm guessing there's a lot more to it than that. And can you give the audience a quick breakdown of what you specifically do?
Yeah, for sure. So, I've worked with a couple of different brands, and something I've realized is there's this misconception that if you want to sell more on your site, you need bigger green buttons and you need like big text and like pop-ups and like make it super busy. But it's not always the case, right? Because sometimes you have to understand first the goal of the brand. Companies have different flows, different funnels. They have, there are different stages of like their lifetime as a company. And so it's a pretty bad practice to assume that what's working for like a huge company is going to work with, it's going to also work for my, super small startup that only has a couple of products. And it's crazy because, a lot of people actually think this way. And the more you test things, you realize, this isn't working for me. And so it's important to understand first, like, and be super clear on, who I am as a brand. Where am I trying to go? What stage am I at currently? And, where are my OKRs that I'm trying to hit? And secondly, you have to think, what's the user intent, right? Because sometimes they go to these landing pages and you're like, oh my God, I love the design and I love the structure, but they're running ads to that specific landing page and you're comparing that landing page to your actual homepage. And so you have to really think through, funnel wise, where are your users coming from? Are they coming from maybe organic search, paid search, maybe like an advertisement on social media, or even like a blog post, And so sometimes you have to, think very strategically about CRO, so that it's more effective and more tailored to your brand instead of just assuming that, generic best practices are going to actually boost your conversion. So that's a little bit of what I do. I help for, brands understand where they're at and understand, how can we get to our next big milestone as fast as possible and without spending that much possible. And so I would say that's something that's helped a lot of brands. I've had the pleasure to work with awesome brands like Vital Proteins. They're a Nestle brand. And so, we've been testing a lot of these things and it's been an awesome success. And so I would say yes, that's one of the big passions that I work with in CRO. So yeah, that's just something that I would say to your audience.
Yeah, that's definitely huge because when people consider CRO, they're like, okay, cool, I got to see what this $100 million brand is doing because they clearly got it locked down. But the thing is, they're trying to go for like the biggest market possible. So for them, those tiny little CRO, changes are affecting like 1 million people visiting their website a month versus like 1,000 people visiting your website a month, or 10,000 people visiting your website. So that's where a lot of people I know personally get confused and like, okay, we got to optimize this button, we got to optimize this landing page, we got to optimize this photo, the site speed, etc. But they're not considering the actual intent behind it. And I think, especially when working with you, that's exactly what exactly what you specialize in, is the actual funnel side of things, right? And how can you get these people from, just cold traffic or warm traffic and have the highest chance of them converting into an actual customer, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, it's just like tackling the funnel first and then tailoring the design experience to the actual user intent. At Vital Protein, we had an issue where it wasn't an issue, but it's kind of like the way it worked. A lot of users were coming in from actual blogs into the PDP. And so the thing there was like, how do you actually tell a brand story from the PDP? Because the PDPs typically are designed to convey more about the product. And so if you just went with the best practices, you would optimize the PDP to just, sell the product and maybe increase AOV by, surfacing bundles and stuff like that. And so by missing out on like understanding really the intent of the user, it was huge for them because, people were coming in and asking, what's collagen, right? Because they sell collagen and like different supplements. And so they were like, what even is this? Like, do I get enough context in the PDP for it to actually make me want to buy, And so it's important to understand what the user wants and how to deliver it in their actual user journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when it comes down to supplements themselves, I think there's just a ton of education that goes into selling the product. And, it's like, how do I know I'm low on collagen? And it's like, well, you first have to educate the person about what collagen is, what it does, how it helps you with like your bones, your skin, etc. And then it's like, okay, you need more of it in your daily supplement stack because of, reason 1, 2, and 3. So in your experience, how much do you have to actually educate the consumer before they're ready to buy?
It just depends again on like the industry as well. For example, if you're in the supplement industry, the hesitations might be, will I get a third eye if I drink this? Or like, what's going to happen to me? Like if I drink this, or what's the side effects, versus like if you're in the fashion industry, they care about the aesthetics, right? And like how it looks and like who is wearing it and stuff like that. And so I would say it's not so much one thing that works for everybody. It's just, again, understanding the industry as well to make sure that you're tackling that need, And so I've worked with tons of like health products and like supplements and vitamins, and like the common factor is like, first of all, like how many people have drank this, and then third of all, like, is this backed by science or by some sort of doctor, is it going to kill me? And so you won't see those hesitations, for example, when you're looking at just general manufacturing products or camping, items or something like that. And those users might have other hesitations to work with. And so what I would say there is really understanding, what the actual industry requires from you, in order to buy. And this is where like qualitative interviews come into play to really understand like, okay, so you're in this phase, what would probably be your hesitation to not buy? And by listening to the users, you really get a lot of feedback into like, what they're actually looking to validate those objections of not buying.
I think the objection handling of any website is probably the most important part, because obviously on a sales call like you and I, when we have B2B services, it's very easy to handle those objections because, we're right on the call, or, maybe we're doing an audit and we can easily explain that in like a Loom video where there's a lot of context. But on a page, when you have the user's attention for, let's say 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or maybe 2 minutes, you have to immediately objection handle like, hey, we're FDA certified, or, this camping equipment comes with a 2-year warranty, so you don't have to worry about it breaking. So all of those things positively reinforce the purchase and de-risk the purchase, so that way the customer doesn't feel like they're making a mistake. Aside from those objection handling tactics, is there anything else that you've seen that has worked or that has like the biggest return on CRO that you'd implement on like the web page or maybe in the cart?
I would say one of the biggest ones is, besides objection handling, would be social proof, showcasing actual users using the product. That's huge. We recently ran a test and a bigger brand. And one of the main reasons that users said we want to buy this product is because they saw the number of people using it, a huge amount. And so um, definitely in this world where any site could get down and like you never know. It's super, super important to make sure that you're not just like um talking about it, but you're also showing them proof. However that may be, whether that is reviews or press or something that actually tells the users like, hey, um, we're real, we're here, and it's actually working and people love us. You know what I mean? And so um that's also a big win for a lot of brands.
Social proof is super underrated, and I can't agree with you more on that because when even I do this, honestly, like whenever I'm making a big purchasing decision, I always look up like customer reviews, and then I look at the photos. Like I love seeing the photos of people using a specific product because I know like, okay, cool, this person used this I don't know, water bottle, for example, and they liked it, and all the different functions actually work because this other person tested it out. And that's it's definitely super underrated. Plus, if you have really high leverage, influencers do the social proof as well. I think people that are within the niche, they're like, oh, cool, this person, in the fitness industry is also using this product. It makes sense. Like, I should definitely try it out at least. So I think that and the objection handling are both things that get people over the fence to actually buy the product. When it comes to actually working with clients, is there I don't want you to spill the beans entirely, but what would be like the first thing that you look at when you onboard a client and figure out what they need to improve on?
I would say number one is how big they are. Because, and then again, like there's this misconception that just because I saw this brand and they have tons of reviews, I need to surface reviews, but then your brand only has 53 reviews. And so it might not look as big, And so getting some context on like where the brand is, and understanding what's their unique value to make sure that you communicate that well across the board, because something that's a really common pattern when I work with these clients is they have beautiful Instagram, like the copy is super great, the images are awesome, and some of them might have like Amazon pages that and they're beautiful and like the copy is well thought out, and then you go to like their DTC pages and it's just like what happened here, and so it's just making sure that across all like the different channels they're actually being consistent, and they're communicating what makes them great, what actually separate them from the rest of the market, and understanding how well they're doing that, whether that is with copy or just visually, right? Can users like just picture this, like if you were to use lorem ipsum in all your copy, would a user still be able to like feel your brand as they scroll through your landing page? And so that's you can communicate a lot through copy, but I think you can communicate much more through just like visuals, typically because like when you're running paid ads, for example, you have such a short span of like a user's attention and not really stopping to like read a lot. They're just like standing and like filling out the brand, and so that's mainly the first thing that I look for is like just overall UX and brand performance. If they're doing it good, if they're doing it right, and what could be the actual possibilities of like hurting CRO.
No, absolutely. And it's funny that you brought that up because I have the same exact issue whenever I'm working with email clients. It's like beautiful website, beautiful Instagram, beautiful socials, everything's great. And then their emails are just like a dungeon, or like they haven't been updated in years and they look like shit. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, how are you guys dropping the ball on this? Like this is the first impression that your customers get, or at least on that specific channel. So you can't really mess that up. Now,
Exactly.
would you work on like obviously you take into account like what the brand is, what their branding actually is, or like what they're trying to convey with their messaging, their values, their principles. What would be the specific pages that you would focus on next? Like would it be the product description page is like number one focus, or would it be, the home page is number one focus and then the product description page? What does that priority list look like for you?
That really depends. I used to think that the more important pages were the homepage and then your PDP, but I've worked with several brands in the past couple of months that, you know, I would say less than 10% of their traffic goes to homepage, and they're so heavy on individual one-page landers that, it's just not that important, and it just worked better for them. And so again, that just comes to, the what we were initially speaking about, where you are as a brand, what are your marketing efforts? What are you trying to do? And not just assume like, hey, I'm just going to completely polish my homepage in PDP, and then your one page lander, which is what getting most of the traffic, they're pretty much just like left out, And so I would say optimization follows users and traffic. And so that's why it's so important when I talk to brands to understand, where's your traffic coming from, to really understand what needs to be optimized next. Because for example, a user might be coming from, page search to a blog, and then from the blog they're redirecting to the PDP, instead of like going through like the generic homepage and then collections and then PDP, you know what I mean? And so it's important to understand the whole flow, because that's what I believe you should optimize first to be able to see better results, And so it really depends on like the brand, where they are, and what they're doing.
So you'd say it would make more sense to first optimize what gets the most traffic and then work down through that list of like, let's say this specific product's getting the most traffic because you're pumping it on Facebook, right? And then the homepage is number 2, and then the FAQ page is number 3, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. And I mean, I would say like in Ultimate, if we had to pick one page, the one that would be the most important, or at least the centric one, would be a PDP, because essentially that's where a user adds the cart. And so regardless if they're coming in from like a homepage, a collection, or a blog, or if you're like running some ads directly to a PDP, like it always ends on a PDP. There are some small exceptions where there's some brands that actually allow at the cart in some other places. In some instances that work, but across the board, I don't think I've seen it perform that well. But if we had to pick one page, I would say PDP has been, the most prominent one for add to cart rates. And so whatever that is, whatever funnel you're following, making sure that your PDP is optimized so that a user can add to cart. And when they get to a PDP, you will at least remove some friction between, the objections that you had, or that they had, sorry. So that when they get there, they're not in the mindset of like trying to get convinced that they need it. It's more of like, okay, I'm just going to add to cart, you put it in. And so I would say the PDP is very, very important.
Got it. And when you analyze these brands on your end, you don't have to give me like an exact number, but ballpark wise, how much revenue does like an average store lose by not having the right CRO implemented onto their website?
That depends. Because different sites have different revenues, but we saw with one brand, they did some small change in their I forgot, I think it was their PDP. And that resulted in like $50,000 more revenue a month just by doing like a small tweak. It was something like, it had something to do with like adding urgency below the add to cart, but just something subtle, like they order in the next 24 minutes and then you get free shipping or something like that. And so when you test something like this, it could result. I think I saw a brand that made around $90,000 of revenue extra a month just by, placing the quantity so like they're below the add to cart. And so it's pretty unreal what CRO can do for your company.
Absolutely. And I think a good question to close this podcast off with would be for all the people that, let's say, that are running their own brand and they want to do CRO, but maybe they're not in a position to invest in CRO right now. What would be like 3 low-hanging fruit tips that they can implement into their store right now that can boost up their conversion rate?
I would say just generic best practices would be first user experience, make sure that your buttons and colors, path accessibility. Sometimes you can barely read, because of the contrast, you can barely read the buttons, making sure that the actions are clear, making sure that there's enough white space and that, your user experience is on point. Number two would be branding, making sure that you use the right voice and tone and that you're actually communicating as a brand to the users and not just like trying to sell, like, and I've seen sites that have promos and promos and promos and like they're just like, so you can smell it from a mile away that they're trying to sell to you so hard. And so that decreases the LTV in the long run. And so just making sure that your branding is also tailored to the whole experience. And then lastly, I would say it's a combination of two, but I would say copying tied into keywords as it relates to SEO. Finding the right keywords, finding the right niche, finding the right things to say about the product goes a long way. And to be upfront about it because users are not trying to. It's not a book that they're trying to read, and so like simplifying everything, but making sure that you have the right components and that your SEO keywords are on point. I would say if you can do those three things, you can start to see a significant uplift in your e-commerce site.
Yeah, those are all super valuable tips. We've had so many brands that came on for us to help them with email marketing, and our designer looked at their like landing page and it was like, hey, like why are these buttons bright blue and the text behind them is white? You can barely see the add to cart button. As soon as they changed that, it was like a 9-day difference in conversion because it was just the readability and the UX and UI design was just trash to begin with. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, with all that said, Andres, thanks again for coming on. Where is the best place for people to find you to either work with you or maybe get like an audit or an analysis and whatnot?
The best way to do it is to get to my site or to follow me on Twitter and just reach out. LinkedIn as well could be a good way to do so. I don't know how you handle it, but maybe we can link those somewhere. But those would be the actual best ways to reach me.
Yeah, no, I can link them down below, but what would be like your Twitter at?
It is UX0 Andrés.
Look at that, nice and simple for everyone to follow.
Yeah.
Well, Andres, thanks again for coming on, and I'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Nikita.
Thanks again for joining us on the Scaling E-commerce podcast. If you enjoyed it or learned something new, remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps out with the algorithm. If you want email marketing tips delivered straight to your inbox on a weekly basis from yours truly, then check out the link below or in the show notes to subscribe and join my newsletter. If you're a D2C brand with at least 10,000 email subscribers and interested in starting a conversation to work together, then go to aspectagency.com and we'd love to chat with you. And if you want to stay up to date with anything email and SMS, just follow me on Twitter at Nikita Vakrushev or check the show notes for the link. With that said, I'm Nikita and I'll see you in the next one.